Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the January 17th Policy Committee meeting. I call the meeting to order. All of the committee members are here. I need an approval of the agenda, but we need to take off 1C first. So I need an approval of the amended agenda.
May I ask a question before we approve the agenda?
Okay.
Before the break, I offered a policy on sexually explicit material. I didn't see it on the agenda unless it's called by a different name or rolled into something else. Am I correct that it's not on today's agenda?
The policy that you identified was 5-5 curriculum adoption, and that's under the discussion because I was going to let you know we're still working on it.
Okay. Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay, first up is policy 5-1 for second review.
Yes, this policy was reviewed by the policy committee in November and then by the board in December. There's been some minor revisions to that policy since the December meeting, including defining age appropriate to include both reading level and content, and then addressing the procedure when a book is removed by a school level committee, that it would then be referred to the district review committee, and then if appropriate, it would be removed from all other schools at that age level and below. So that was the request of the committee. So those revisions have been made, and staff would ask that this go for approval at the February meeting.
So Gary, I had a conversation with Ms. Morris about there's no page 3, the third page, under criteria for selecting instructional materials, both core and supplemental. So we changed it for age appropriateness as to both reading level and content. And I said, well, should we specifically talk about sexual explicit content? Or should we leave it broader and leave it with that? But we could, for example, put an example in there. I don't know. I've been stuck on this as well.
So are you talking about the policy that I offered that's now under 5-5 curriculum adoption?
Yes, but I'm looking at 5.5-1 because it's about core instructional materials, supplemental materials, and media collection materials. So it covers instructional materials.
Okay, so if we pick it up under what we're talking about, curriculum adoption, that should carry over to that as well. Is that what you're saying? That would encompass it as well?
Or I don't know if you need it in 5.5 because it's in 5.1, but we can put it in 5.5 if that's what you want to do.
I think it's important that we give these review committees some very, as much as possible, explicit guidelines of what we feel is acceptable or unacceptable. So I don't particularly care which place it goes, but I think it's important that we be as specific as possible without overreaching as far as what's unacceptable.
So could we do some examples, Michelle, in there, or for example, or something without limiting it, because it is broad right now.
We could, if you wanted to put including but not limited to sexually explicit materials.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, instead of roll it there, move it up into that. That's fine by me.
Ms. Hontel, I have a question. Or it could be for Dr. Houlihan. We have had the committee in the past that has done the reviewing of books, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what are we, so the, let me see. My question is, has there been a challenge with it in the past, Dr. Houlihan, in reference to how the committee has been operating?
So it's school-based committees, right?
Right.
Yeah, so each school, yeah.
And then the system-wide. My concern,
District-wide.
what originally proposed this, is consistency. You know, it's one school feels like a certain piece of literature is okay, another one doesn't. I think we need to be uniform. If it smells all over. So that was my reasoning for the original part of my motion, which said, you know, if this one school-based committee finds it unacceptable, then system-wide it's unacceptable. And as it appears, it has been changed to kicking it back to the system-wide review committee, which I could live with.
Okay, so
I mean, every
what we
school
did-
culture is not the same. So one school committee may prefer a specific type of book, not specific type of book, but a type of book that another school may not feel as though is, and I'm not talking about, and I understand the difference between what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. But I think to ban a book from one school and ban it from the entire district, I think that can be somewhat unfair, especially if we are not just limiting it to sexually explicit books, but other books that some may feel may be inappropriate.
Well, that's
Because
not what
there may be some
that's what we're saying. The change in the policy. If a school-based committee finds a piece of literature or what have you
right.
unacceptable, it's kicking it up to the district level committee to make a determination for the remainder of the district. It's been changed from one school basically deciding and making a decision, which is all the other schools are held to bringing it back to the system-wide committee to make a determination for the other schools.
Okay, if I could, Dr. Houlihan, I asked you a question. Are you able to give me the answer to that?
Yeah, I'd have to confirm with our academics team, but I don't, have we had challenges? Yes. Have we had,
Of course.
materials that have been challenged in certain schools? We have. Have there been concerns presented about the decisions? Not that I'm aware of. But I think what this policy now does is the district committee has the district as its customer, in their lens, number one, not an individual school. So I think the benefit of this policy now is it gets kicked back to the district with that as their lens, as opposed to a book being automatically removed from every other school.
So we had some issues early on because we only use the words age appropriateness, right? So some schools may have taken that as just, could they read the book, right? The content is what we're worrying about, not whether or not they can actually read the words. We want to make sure that the content, so that's why we added as to both reading level and content. So some schools felt that they couldn't do that because we didn't talk about the fact that about content. They were just looking whether they could, that it was a 5 to 6 year old book and they could read it.
If we are Union County Public Schools, how are we going to have a book at any school that's good at one and not good at another school? If we're Union County Public Schools, our student, our pride is we educate our children. So how are we going to have something that's good at one and not good at the other? If a book isn't good, the book isn't good.
I understand what you're saying, Reverend Benson, but again, I think it creates a conversation of what's not good to you for whatever reason could be good, but just because of you identify it as not being a good book. So I think Ms. Hintel mentioned about examples of different books or what have you, that would give more of a, I would hope, a more effective scope of how to eliminate a particular book. Because some may say that, for example, Huckleberry Finn may be an appropriate book for whatever reason, but it is a book that has been in schools for years, and it is full of history, and it's full of, it has a great, has great content, but for whatever reason, some may say that book would not be appropriate, may not be good. And so that's why I'm trying to understand what is identified as good and bad, and on what scale are we making that judgment.
And the point is, you know, the point is the same, because we can't become islands unto ourselves. There has to be a district standard that the district goes by, and you know, just because something may have existed in one place, once that's identified, we bring it up to the district level. Hopefully, at the district level, we'll make that determination. It could be that what somebody at a particular school thought was bad, by the time we get to the district can say, no, your perception of that book was wrong. I agree with that, but there needs to be one standard. It shouldn't be what's good for one school may not be good for another. It should be what is good for Union County Public Schools.
Well, I don't want to continue to harp on this conversation, but because I mentioned how I felt previously at our last meeting, I only feel as though it needs to be, if we're going to go this direction, again, I understand, I've worked in the school system, I understand what appropriate and inappropriate is. It just needs to be a fair scale. It needs to be one that is not biased. And again, I still stand by saying that there are some schools whose culture, and we're still under the umbrella of educating kids in Union County Public Schools, but there are some schools that may be able to identify with certain books, and it may be effective for that culture other than others. And nothing is wrong with that. We're still teaching, we're still educating, we're still empowering all kids in Union County Public Schools. So my only concern is that we're not having a scale, we're not using a scale that is one-sided, that is truly a fair scale being used. Because when I think a couple of board meetings ago, there was a book that was presented, and again, I would agree 1000%. That is an example of a book that is inappropriate for middle school students. I would say even probably high school. I don't know, but I know
too, yes.
That's inappropriate. Okay, we can all agree on that. All right, but we need to make sure that our scale that we're using is a fair scale. That is my only concern.
Jimmy, you need to.
I wholeheartedly agree with fair scale. I wholeheartedly agree with fair scale.
Okay. Anything else on that one?
Since this is second review, are you looking for a motion to move it on to the board at this point?
Well, we're going to add in including but not limited to sexual explicit content.
Yes.
And the other definitions included in my policy that I proposed?
What else?
Well, I don't have a copy of the policy in front of me, but I assume that's the part for discussion. Are we just going to include that entire, all that verbiage? Basically defining sexually explicit material? Or are we just going to use a broad definition of sexually explicit material and leave that up to the committees to define what's sexually explicit?
It's content. I would like to use the word content instead of materials.
Okay, sexually explicit content.
Ms. Hintel, is it possible, because the recommendation that you made a few moments ago about the different examples, is it possible that before we take this to the full board, that examples are provided so that we will know exactly what direction we are going?
Okay,
Is that possible?
say that again.
I said, is that possible? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think that we need to go to, not send this to the full board. And I think we need to go back at our next meeting and have a closed session to talk with Michelle about what we can and cannot do. When I'm
support that.
talking
Yes,
about
ma'am.
Gary's, I don't have it in front of me, but I remember some of it, but I think we have to have a conversation with Michelle.
Yes, ma'am.
So we'll table this one to the next policy committee meeting in February.
Yep,
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So does that also eliminate 5B?
We'll hold that one to the next meeting as well. That was
Okay.
part of the discussions that I was going to share with
Right.
you, that we were holding it, so that we'll roll those in together.
Okay,
And do you still want them in both places if whatever wording we get?
no, I think that'd be redundant.
Okay, so then we need to figure out which one to put it in so we can talk about it. But it definitely, something has to go into 5-1 because that's where the review committee is and the school-based committee is. We have to do it in there.
And I agree. I think the board needs to give those committees direction as much as possible without micromanaging, but I want them to have at least some guidelines or something to at least go off of as to what we're asking them to look for. So it would have seemed 5-1 would be the most appropriate place.
And if you had it in 5-5, you could always reference 5-5 and 5-1.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anything else on 5-1? No. Okay, next up is proposed new policy sale, disposal and lease of real property. It's early.
Yes, this proposed new policy was reviewed by the committee in November and then the board in December. There's been no stakeholder input since that time, and staff would ask that this go for approval at the February meeting.
Okay.
Motion to approve and recommend approval to the full board.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, thank you. Okay, next up is policies for first review. First one is policy 1-14.
Yes, we have staff has recommended in 1-14 that language be added that says essentially that any place in policy or guidelines where it refers to a specific position, i.e. the superintendent, it includes designees for that position. We've had some controversy recently about who could ask for what or who could do what. And so this way it makes it clear that if it says the superintendent and the superintendent designates it to a cabinet staff member or to a principal, that designation is covered by the policy as well. So
Okay.
we would ask that this go for review at the February meeting.
Go for a second review with this policy or with this committee, or go to the full board in February?
It would go to the full board for its first review, and then it would come back to the policy committee in February.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Second.
Aye. 4-0. Next up is policy 2-9.
Okay, 2-9, this policy is being revised due to some statutory revisions, and it's been proposed by the School Boards Association. And it talks about soliciting bids and that the district would comply with the legal depository requirements. Staff would ask that this go for review at the February meeting as well.
So moved.
This is ridiculous. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Second.
word. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just so you know, this policy and the next proposal, and Shauna's team has reviewed as well already.
Okay. Next is 2-14.
Yes, these recommendations, these proposed changes are also based on statutory changes and recommendations from the School Boards Association. And it has been reviewed by Shauna's team. I'm seeing that there is a duplicate on 14 and 15, so I will remove it from one so that we don't have it twice. And then staff would ask that this go for review at the February meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
4-0 to the full board. Next up is policy 5-4.
This is one that we've been working on for a while. If you were to review this policy, extracurricular activities and interscholastic athletics, it really only dealt with interscholastic athletics and not with extracurricular activities. So we have been working on this one and have added the language necessary so as to address the requirements of the Equal Access Act on student-led middle school and high school clubs.
So so the red is deletion, right? And green is addition, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And some of those changes are based on the High School Athletic Association changes.
So they have appeals process, so that, okay. Does anyone have any questions? Nope. Need a motion to go to first review for the full board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next is administrative guidelines for review.
Yes, this is strictly statute, the Deborah Greenblatt Act. And we had in policy just referred to the fact that we follow the Deborah Greenblatt Act, but OCR has been cracking down on districts that don't have it all spelled out in policy or guidelines. So that's the recommendation, is that we take that language and put it actually in administrative guidelines. And so this would, we would ask that this go for the review. Since it's an administrative guideline, it goes for one review to the board at the February meeting.
I'm frankly surprised that we don't already have this policy. Considered in my long memory, I remember a incident at Wolf School that was kind of serious way back when, but I'll make the motion to move this along.
Second.
And just for clarification, we did have it delineated in the handbook, the
Mhm.
entire statute. We just didn't have it as administrative guidelines. So it was out there. We're just clarifying the location.
But if it's in the handbook and not in policy, isn't it kind of hard to take disciplinary action against an employee that would, violate this just because it's in the handbook? Is that reason enough?
Well, we do have policy that says we follow the Deborah Greenblatt Act. We just didn't didn't print the entire act. We
All
did
right.
say that we're bound by the act.
Okay. So I made the motion to move it along.
Jimmy second, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
thank you. Next up for discussion is display of flags in school facilities.
Yes, I'm still working on this policy. I'm looking for some good guidance from some other districts that I've been working on it. We'll have that for you at the next meeting for review.
Can't we just make it related to curriculum? Because
can.
that would take DLI, which is the country flags, North Carolina flags, US, state, foreign language classes, and that's it. So no Trump flags, no anything else.
I'll work on that. Yep, and I'll have it for you for
Gary,
February.
are you good with that if it's related to curriculum?
Yes, if it's a national flag of another country that's part of a current curriculum or a DLI, I have no problem with that.
So my question is, have we had concerns about flags in classrooms and in the schools?
I have concerns.
You mind sharing them?
No, because I'm not going to name names, but I personally know of a classroom that has what I find offensive display of political flags. And I think our overall goal, since I've been on this board, is for classrooms to be apolitical. We've even gone as far for one of our high schools to change the nickname and all new uniforms because there was a group that found that offensive. I'm sure if I put a Confederate flag in somebody's classroom, they would be offended. If somebody chose to show a, well, you pick them.
Right.
I just
We
think
had
need to stay
issues
on top.
too of teachers who had Trump flags in their classrooms or
Mhm.
Gadsden flags in their rooms and stuff like that. And I just think, while whatever you feel about of those flags, we shouldn't have them in a classroom. We should have just stuff that relates to curriculum.
The old rule that I was told way back when is a student should go through the semester or the year in a class and come out of that class and not have any idea what the political beliefs or persuasion of that teacher was. I think that's a good rule to live by. What you do on your personal time is your own business, but when it's in the schoolhouse, it's our business. And I want to stay as apolitical as possible. Now, there are classes which will have political debates, the political discussions. That's fine. That's a good part of civics curriculum, I believe, or political science or history. But as far as political insignia, flags, signs in a classroom, on permanent display, I think that is, and not part of a curriculum, I think that's not somewhere we need to go.
Does that help?
I'm looking forward to seeing
Don't
how.
talk to Mrs. Morris, sorry.
It does help. Thank you.
Okay.
And you said, Attorney Morris, you'll have that created at the next
For
policy
next
meeting?
meeting.
Gotcha.
That's my goal. Yep.
Okay. Looking forward.
Barring
to
any
seeing-
unforeseen circumstances.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Sides, nope, we're good. Okay, policy 5-5. We already dealt with that, right? Okay,
Yeah,
we
we've already
decided to
dealt with it.
postpone that.
We're going to
Okay.
remove that one from the list. Yep.
okay. So that comes to closing items. So actions items, take it to the full board, or let's see, the new policy. Policy 1-14 for first review is 1-14, 2-9, 2-14, and 5-4, and then administrative guideline on seclusion and restraint. Is that it? Yep. Okay. Our next meeting is February 21st at 8 a.m. via Zoom. And I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
So moved.
adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.